Welcome to RonTape. The narrative takes place in Miami, Florida, in the foreseeable future, where the devastating consequences of climate change have led to extensive flooding and scorching heat. Due to the unbearable heat, the city has deteriorated into a mere shadow of its former self, with residents forced to conduct businesses and activities at night. Poverty is widespread, and some inhabitants are compelled to reside in makeshift slums or even boats. Amidst this dreary and disheartening atmosphere, individuals cling to memories of happier times. Former soldiers Nick and Emily have established a distinctive enterprise known as the Reminiscence tank. With the aid of sedatives and advanced technology, this service enables individuals to revisit their cherished memories. Nick can even project and exchange their memories in a holographic format, heightening the surreal nature of the encounter. The narrative subsequently pivots to Hank, a former military comrade of Nick's, who is utilizing the Reminiscence service. Nick transports him back to a bright day 13 years prior, where he was frolicking with his cherished pet dog. Whilst Hank reminisces this treasured moment, Nick explains that the reminiscence experience is akin to a potent drug, enabling individuals to reconnect with their loved ones and revisit the most significant moments of their existence. Nonetheless, Nick cautions that excessive indulgence in these memories can result in a perilous addiction, ensnaring individuals in their past and depriving them of the present. Lastly, Nick discloses that every memory experienced by clients via the Reminiscence tank is recorded onto miniature flash drives, underscoring the additional dangers associated with this service. During nighttime, as Nick and Emily prepare to shut their business for the day, May, a walk-in customer, requests assistance in locating her lost keys. The moment Nick lays eyes on May, he feels an instant attraction towards her. Even though Emily informs him that it is too late to provide assistance, he chooses to help anyway. Without delay, he supplies her with the apparatus and submerges her in a recollection of her morning routine. As May processes her memory, Nick closely scrutinizes it and notices intricate details within her room. Emily informs him that May had placed the keys in her bag and inadvertently dropped them in the dressing room. Notwithstanding, Nick proceeds with the memory and discovers that May is a nightclub vocalist. Once the session concludes, May departs but accidentally forgets her earrings. On the following night, Nick visits the identical nightclub from May's memory, intending to return her earrings. Once May concludes her performance, he approaches her, and the two engage in a brief conversation. Upon returning her earrings, May unexpectedly asks Nick to accompany her to her apartment. Entranced by her beauty, Nick agrees without hesitation. Upon reaching her home, the two engage in an amorous encounter. Following their intimate encounter, Nick and May converse candidly on the rooftop. May queries why Nick doesn't utilize the memory tank more frequently, to which Nick clarifies that memories are more potent when experienced in small increments. Abruptly, it is unveiled that Nick has been inside the Reminiscence tank the entire time, ruminating about May. Everything was merely a figment of his imagination. Despite Emily's attempts to extract him from the tank, Nick cannot cease pondering his ideal woman. As it transpires, May vanished inexplicably a few months ago, and now Nick is repeatedly using the Reminiscence tank to uncover her whereabouts. Nick often frequents the club where May was employed and inquires with her acquaintances for leads, yet to no avail. When all else fails, Nick takes a sedative and returns to his memories of May. On one occasion, Nick awakens to a loud knocking on his front door. Feeling frustrated and half asleep, Nick angrily shouts at the individual on the other end before storming out to confront them. Upon opening the door, Nick discovers that nobody is present, only a pair of earrings on the ground. Nick recognizes that the earrings belong to his former partner May and apprises Emily of the situation. Nonetheless, Emily dismisses the notion, stating that the earrings could have been present for an extended period. Subsequently, the pair visits the police station to extract memories from a dying criminal named Miles. Nick initially struggles to acquire any valuable information until he modifies his approach and uncovers a discussion between Miles' superior, St. Joe, and a corrupt officer known as Cyrus Booth. At a nightclub, they are surprised to find May performing as a singer while appearing to be under the influence of a substance. As the memory unfolds, Nick discovers that May had taken a bag of narcotics from St. Joe and absconded. The subsequent day, Nick voyages to New Orleans under a pseudonym and gains entry into St. Joe's club. However, Joe uncovers his deception and instructs his associates to assault him. After Nick ultimately confesses his intent to locate May, Joe discloses that he has not encountered her since she absconded with his narcotics. He then instructs his minions to submerge Nick. In the face of adversity, the situation appears dire for the protagonist, but unexpectedly, Emily materializes and engages in combat with the assailants. Despite being outnumbered, she eliminates each of them with her precise marksmanship, rescuing Nick from peril. Upon their arrival in Miami, Nick expresses his perplexity regarding the entire scenario. He surmises that May was merely manipulating him and must have pilfered something from them. Although Emily considers Nick's concerns to be unfounded, he reminds her of the last time she met May. Subsequently, he urges her to employ the Reminiscence tank to further investigate the matter. Within the memory, we witness that before May's disappearance, she visited Emily, bearing a bottle of wine. The two engage in a conversation about various topics, such as their personal relationships and families. May also discloses her proclivity for narcotics addiction. Subsequently, when Emily briefly leaves the room, May surreptitiously enters the memory storage room and pilfers a memory chip. Upon exiting the tank, Emily endeavors to vindicate herself for concealing May's substance addiction. However, Nick attaches little significance to her explanation and hastens to the memory storage room. Following a brief exploration, Nick discovers that the memory chip belonging to a young woman, Elsa Karine, is absent. It transpires that Elsa was a regular client who vanished several weeks prior. Subsequently, Nick travels to a floating market in search of Elsa, but regrettably, he discovers that she has passed away. Additionally, he discovers that Elsa's child, Freddie, was abducted by a red-haired woman who bears resemblance to May. The disclosure startles Nick, leading him to ponder whether May was involved in criminal activities. Notwithstanding, he persists in his quest until an individual traps him in a deserted dwelling and assaults him. The attacker warns Nick that he will face deadly consequences if he continues to pursue May. Following the assault, Nick returns to his office and promptly revisits his memory to look for leads. Upon scrutinizing it more closely, he ascertains that the assailant is the same corrupt officer, Cyrus, who was in league with St. Joe. In a bid to obtain further information about Cyrus, Nick and Emily hasten to the police station, only to be impeded by a sizable throng amassed outside. As it turns out, the city's most prosperous entrepreneur, Sylvan, has just passed away. At present, Tamara, who lost her husband, and their son, Sebastian, are being guided outside. As soon as Nick lays his eyes on Tamara, he recognizes her as a previous client of the Reminiscence tank. In a hurry, he rushes to his office and replays her memory, where she is seen dancing with her late husband, Sylvan. By comparing the two clips, Nick finds similarities in the man's voice, which confirms that Elsa was having an affair with Sylvan. Additionally, he discovers that Freddie was born out of their illicit relationship. Nick connects the dots and concludes that Sylvan's son, Sebastian, hired Cyrus to murder Elsa and her son because he wants to inherit his father's wealth alone. Upon discovering the truth, Nick decides to take matters into his own hands and sets out to uncover the entire conspiracy, armed with a firearm. In the next scene, Nick arrives at Tamara's opulent residence in the wealthiest part of Miami, visibly angry. Nick is mistaken for a dancer who was hired to perform, and he decides to go along with it, realizing it could be his best opportunity to uncover the truth. Soon enough, He meets Tamara and angrily asks her about May and Elsa. Tamara, who has lost a lot of her memory due to depression, reveals that May and Cyrus were working together on something. She also seems to know about her husband's affair with Elsa. Sadly, before Tamara can provide more details, Sebastian interrupts and calls for security, believing that Nick is harassing his mother. The guards, after throwing Nick out, disclose Cyrus's whereabouts to him as they too are tired of the corrupt cop's antics and want him eliminated. Upon arriving at the location, Nick spots a woman who resembles May and decides to follow her. However, he ends up encountering Cyrus, who is humming a tune that reminds Nick of his initial encounter with May. Cyrus then reveals that Nick's meeting and interaction with May were all planned, with her only task being to manipulate him, use the Reminiscence tank, and steal Elsa's chip, which contained memories of her having an affair with Sylvan. In a relentless pursuit, Nick chases after Cyrus, who attempts to escape through a window. A fierce fight ensues between the two, taking place both on land under the blazing sun and underwater. In the end, Nick triumphs and knocks Cyrus unconscious before taking him to his office to put him in the Reminiscence tank. The memories of the corrupt cop reveal that May was working for Cyrus all along and pretended to be interested in Nick to carry out a plan. May had even met with Nick's friends to learn more about him. However, another memory shows that Cyrus was the one who killed Elsa, and May witnessed it. She then fled with Freddy to an unknown location. Nick questions Cyrus about his last encounter with May, and he recalls the memory of meeting her outside Nick's office. He forcefully drags May away, and she drops one of her earrings during the struggle. Nick questions Cyrus about May's whereabouts, and he recalls assaulting her and forcing her to reveal Freddy's location by overloading her with narcotics. To Nick's surprise, May appears on the hologram and speaks to him through Cyrus's memories. She declares her affection for Nick and subtly discloses Freddy's hiding place, anticipating his capture of Cyrus. It turns out May had already foreseen Nick's success in capturing Cyrus, leaving him a secret message. Regrettably, in the final memory, Nick discovers that May resorted to an unthinkable act when the pressure became too overwhelming for her. Overcome by grief and anger, Nick seeks vengeance by subjecting Cyrus to relive his worst memory repeatedly. The memory shows Cyrus' face being burned by St. Joe's men as punishment for stealing profits. However, even this is not enough for Nick, so he increases the voltage of the memory and lets Cyrus die in the water tank. Nick confronts Sebastian at Sylvan's residence, accusing him of killing Elsa for the sake of his father's wealth. He also reveals that he knows about his father's affair with Elsa. Enraged and shocked, Sebastian attempts to shoot Nick but cannot bring himself to do it. In the end, he turns the gun on himself, preparing to take his own life. However, just in time, his mother arrives and prevents him from doing anything drastic. Having resolved the situation, Nick visits Emily and admits to his wrongdoing, recounting the entire story of May, Cyrus, and their deceptive web. He suggests that life is brief, and Emily should return to her family and reside with them. In his last moments, Nick connects himself to the wires, ready to start the reminiscence process on himself. Shortly after, Nick enters the Reminiscence tank, reliving his past memories with May, where they express their love for each other and pass away peacefully. Years later, Emily, accompanied by her daughter, visits Nick at the Reminiscence tank and leaves flowers for him. The movie concludes with a message that while dwelling on the past can be perilous, revisiting memories of cherished moments can be a path to inner peace.